Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I'm going to be giving a rundown of how to play a balanced druid in PvP. This is going to be focusing particularly on survivability and how to deal with double melee DPS, because this can be a tricky setup and it's a commonly requested one from people that come to my stream or in the comments down below on these YouTube videos. So I wanted to center a video around it and my thoughts on how to deal with this situation. In this specific video, we will be fighting an Enhancement Shaman and a Fury Warrior, very common composition. You'll often see Ret Paladins Warriors, Demon Hunters, and Death Knights. These seem to be very popular, so these strategies will be effective in all of those instances and cases. So this is a high value video for you if you are interested in watching and learning the balanced druid. I think that it is still a fantastic specialization. You know, it's not a mage or a destruction warlock, but it's one that I'm still going to do my best to run down the middle and try and get a win here. I've been rank 1 the past 2 seasons of Shadowlands, already on balanced druid, and in previous series prior to that, and I'm looking to try and continue the streak all the way through the expansion. So the first thing you're going to want to take advantage of is the Alkin Frenzy Honor talent. This is when you are getting attacked, you will get stacks of Alkin Frenzy, which will make your clone super fast. It will also make your Entangling Roots super fast, and it's important to try and abuse both of those diminishing returns when it is available. In this instance, I'm playing with a Restoration Shaman who is going to be rooting the target, but if you're not playing with a healer that has the ability to root, it is really good to utilize those both to get Entangling Roots and Cyclones onto melee DPS to be able to extend your op time away from them, because that is the main goal, is to stay far away. If double melee DPS are connecting to you for any significant amount of time, you are probably going to die, and this is going to be your main tool to get away. At the start of the game, I run right in. Some teams will target Resto Shamans, so I like to just kind of throw my body at them at the start and say, okay, I'm going to be blocking for my Resto Shaman, get my dots up, but you can see right away they've popped Conqueror's Banner, they've popped a lot of offensive cooldowns. So you're going to want to Bark Skin, kill the Static Field Totem, and try and stop crowd control. I tried to Solar Beam the Cyclone there. We weren't able to kill it just yet, but even with our Bark Skin alone and our Shaman in the back, we were able to sit comfortably through this with our Demon Hunter also using Blur. Now we're going to use a stun onto the Warrior, and we're going to dump our damage cooldowns. We're going to use our Celestial Alignment during stun locks and try and blast Star Surges. We need to kill Grounding Totems before we launch Star Surges, otherwise they're going to be going into the void and doing no damage. So we chain crowd control on the Druid into an Imprison, and I'm pulling the Warrior behind the pillar to line of sight the Druid as well as the Shaman, so they have to decide between continuing to attack me or they're going to have to pull back to their healer and they're going to get off of me. And this is something you do want to abuse with positioning, is pull melee DPS either so that the healer has to come out in the open, as the Druid has now, so we'll be able to Cyclone them in the future if we want to, maybe swap to them if we want to. In this position, I decided to attack the Druid a bit. I think with Resto Druids, it's very important to swap targets. Now they've switched targets, though. They're going after the Demon Hunter, so we need to be ready for this. We're not in the best position to be able to avoid Cyclones of the enemy Druid. I tried to Trinket to Cyclone them back, but they were already prepared for it. But if they leave me open, I really need to abuse free casting Cyclones, free casting as much damage as possible, because in this situation, they really shouldn't be leaving you open. We get a stun onto the Druid. It would be good for me to try and chain this stun into more crowd control, so I jump towards the Warrior to bash, then I cast a Cyclone towards the Druid to try and chain out of the stun, and we can get a lot of damage onto the Warrior. We get a Trinket and an Iron Bark from the Restoration Druid. Then we're just going to try and Cyclone the Warrior at low health, deny the recovery, really abuse that, track the Omnibar. We could see there was no pummel, no wind shear, and the Shaman just used grounding. So this is where we want to be casting as many spells as we can. We're going to activate our Lunar Eclipse, dump a bunch of Star Surges into the Shaman, force them to run back to the pillar, and counter pressure and out positioning can also be a really good way of forcing the other team defensive so they don't just run you down. So utilizing stun locks and burst to scare your opponents back to the pillar and try and have them reset to buy you time out in the open and to be able to run the other healer out of mana, unless they're playing with the Restoration Shaman. If they're running with the Restoration Shaman, the mana strat may not work for you. Those are some of the most challenging matchups. But with the Resto Druid or any other healer, really, you can just run them out of mana. We're going to push in, triple in cap, and try and chain that into a Cyclone. We're going to get shut down by the Enhancement Shaman, and now the Druid is looking for Cyclones, so we're prepared with our Solar Beam. We're going to use Bark Skin here because we're standing on top of the melee, trying to get aggressive, trying to close the game out. We've got Trinket from the Warrior, Trinket from the Druid. This is a game-winning situation. If you can get crowd control on the Druid and a stun on the Warrior, there's a high probability that you're going to be able to kill the Warrior, so I'm using Bark Skin to stand on top of them, stay aggressive with them, but if we do not get the kill, we will likely have to start running away utilizing Wild Charge and Typhoon to avoid their targets. Here you can see the Demon Hunter trading out Darkness. In this situation, my Shaman has no Trinket. I have no Trinket. If there's any crowd control there during that burst damage, it would likely be lethal. We're going to Cyclone the Enhancement Shaman. They decide to Trinket out of it to try and support their team. We're trying to use Solar Beam on the healer, and now it's time to run. We've lost the kill window. We're going to use Wild Charge. We're going to position away. We're going to Typhoon the Shaman, and we're going to try and kite as much as possible. As soon as we've run out of mobility, Bear Form Frenzied Regeneration is going to be the default. Just get some Thrash stacks up, use Iron Fur, use the Bear Form abilities while you're stuck. But if there's offensive cooldowns like Recklessness, dropping a Spirit Link at this point in time when you can't get distance, you don't have cooldowns to counter pressure them, this is when you're likely going to have to use your most powerful defensive cooldowns like Spirit Link and Darkness. Here we use Stun on Warrior and we use Stun on Shaman. I can chain the stun into a clone, and CCing the Enhancement Shaman, it basically is the backup healer, means that the Druid will have to spend more mana. We also then use Imprison onto the Druid while the Shaman is Cyclone to isolate the Warrior and try and do as much damage as possible. Unfortunately, I was being a bit greedy in this position. I was trying to get the perfect go, which is getting into Lunar Eclipse of Fury of Elune. So I'll activate it right here, I think. Now we get interrupted again. So I just give up on trying to get the perfect go. I've got a full Cyclone on the Druid. Shaman has no Trinket. I think it's time to just send the Empowerment, try and do as much damage as possible. They proc their little auto Ventir route and root my Demon Hunter from continuing the pursuit, though. This is Conqueror's Banner, so we're going to knock back the enemies, try to keep them away from their primary target, which is me at the moment. My Demon Hunter has Blur, which is going to trade really effectively for any damage that a Turbo Cleave can do. So we do kind of want to bait them to go on the Demon Hunter in this position. We get a really good Earth Grab Totem. This is what I mean by utilizing roots against double melee DPS, is rooting enemies when they're behind the pillar, out of line of sight. We stack them for triple clone, which then we can Cyclone the Shaman out of the stun. Again, removing the backup healer, go after the Warrior a bit, go after the Druid a bit. Still stay a little bit away from the pillar. You don't want to just run right on top of them unless you've got some guaranteed crowd control, and we just sent all of that area of effect stuns. Sometimes dragging the DPS on top of the healer for triple stun can be a good idea as well, if the triple stun is available, because then you can get Cyclones out of them or reposition away and free cast. But right now, I'm not really feeling particularly safe. I want to wait till I have my Trinket, get in a better position. We're running the healer out of mana, so there's no urgency right now for me to try and close out the game. Again, trying to use Solar Beam, get faked out. I think I didn't land a single Solar Beam. If you can land Solar Beams on the healer, don't miss your beams like me. You'll get a lot of pressure against a composition like this, so definitely try to pay attention. Here, the melee DPS have used gap closers, so we're going to use Typhoon to knock them away. We don't have Wild Charge, so we're just going to keep pulling away for a moment here, using Dash to try and avoid them, and that Typhoon Snare as well. And we're holding on to our Eclipse activation here. We have an instant Lunar Strike. We can go into Eclipse. We can send our Empowerment here, and this Empowerment will enable us to do a lot of damage. You always want to coordinate this with crowd control on the healer if you can. So we're going to stun the healer, kill the Grounding Totem, try and get in a better position, bash the Warrior, but the Enhancement Shaman's dropped a Chain Harvest, which is going to pretty much counterattack any amount of damage that we've done in that position. But we're looking to reset our Eclipse, get back into Lunar. Lunar Eclipse is a much more threatening Eclipse right now in PvP, and we also have our Celestial Alignment coming up in a moment here, which is kind of your game-winning cooldown. You want to make sure you're always getting crowd control on the healer before you pop that Celestial Alignment, because this is your 3-minute window. You don't get to see it very often. It's your highest amplifying point of damage. Here I try to Cyclone. Druid Tranquility immunes it, and we're kind of desperate to stay alive, so I'm going to Cyclone the Enhancement Shaman, heal up my Demon Hunter, utilize Entangling Roots, try and peel as much as possible when they're not on me, and off heal with Regrowth. And in that situation, I kept them at bay for now. Then we're going to incap the Druid, Typhoon the Shaman away from the Demon Hunter. We Wind Shear the Druid. I'm going to try and go for a Cyclone out of the Wind Shear. And now with the Cyclone fully landed, we're going to pop Fury of Elune, activate Eclipse to get another Fury of Elune, and then dump a bunch of damage into this stun with Incarnation and try and just push right in for the win. And we managed to squeeze in enough crits to finish the job. If we didn't, the Druid was going to be running out of mana regardless. And you can see that it's a delicate balance of Typhoon, Wild Charge, Bear Form Frenzy when you have no more escapes, and then trying to use these fast clones, the roots, keep them off of your allies, or counter pressure them when you have AoE stuns to kind of burst down your target and force them to retreat back to the pillar. And if you can balance all three of these options to stay alive, then you're going to start having a lot more success. But I would say to just start with the basics, which is Wild Charge and Typhoon. Make sure you're getting value, knocking 2 targets a far distance away, abusing Z-axis when you can. Same goes for Wild Charge. If you can jump up and down Z-axes, that is a really good way to avoid double melee DPS. But aside from that, I hope that this run through and commentary was useful to you. And other than that, I will catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.